It is November 8th, 1939. You are standing inside a packed beer hall in Munich, Germany. The air is thick with cigarette smoke and the smell of stale beer. A man is speaking at the podium. That man is Adolf Hitler, and in exactly 13 minutes the pillar directly behind him will explode. But Hitler will not be there. He will have left early. And because of that, 63 people will be wounded, 8 will die, and the entire course of the 20th century will remain unchanged. One small decision, 13 minutes. That is all that stood between the world you know and a world that never happened. The story of that night begins not with Hitler, but with a carpenter named Georg Elser. You have probably never heard his name, most people have not, yet historians like Roger Moorhouse, who spent years studying resistance inside the Third Reich, argue that Elser came closer to stopping the war than almost anyone else in history. He was not a soldier, he was not a spy, he was a quiet, precise man from a small German town who decided, entirely on his own, that one man had to die before everything fell apart. Elser had watched Germany change. He had watched neighbours disappear. He had watched wages fall and fear rise. He was not affiliated with any political party. He received no orders from any resistance network. He simply looked at what was happening around him and reached a conclusion that most people were too afraid to even. Hitler had to be stopped. And Elser was going to do it himself. He began planning in 1938. He visited the Bürgerbräukeller beer hall in Munich repeatedly, studying the layout, memorizing the schedule, measuring the distances. He knew Hitler gave a speech there every year on the anniversary of the 1923 beer hall putsch. He knew exactly where Hitler would stand. He knew exactly how long he would speak. And so Elser built a bomb. He built it himself, by hand, piece by piece, over the course of months. He hollowed out a section of the pillar directly behind the podium. He installed the device with a timer. He worked at night, hiding inside the hall after closing, sleeping on sawdust, eating almost nothing. It took him over 30 nights. The device was a masterpiece of quiet, patient engineering. Historian Roger Moorhouse later described it as remarkably sophisticated for a self-taught craftsman working entirely alone. The timer mechanism was dual redundant, meaning it had a backup. Elser had thought of everything except the weather. On the night of November 8, 1939, a thick fog had settled over Munich. Hitler arrived at the Bürgerbräukeller as expected. He took the podium. He began to speak. But the fog that night had grounded his personal aircraft. He needed to return to Berlin. He had a train to catch. And so, instead of speaking for his usual 2 hours, Hitler cut the speech short. He spoke for just over an hour. He stepped down from the podium at 9:07 p.m. He put on his coat. He walked out into the fog. At 9:20 p.m., the pillar exploded. The ceiling collapsed directly onto the podium where Hitler had been standing. 8 people died in the rubble. 63 more were pulled out injured. If Hitler had kept to his normal schedule, he would have been at that podium at exactly that moment. The bomb was accurate. The timing was precise. Georg Elser had done everything right. And yet. Elser was arrested the same night, caught at the Swiss border carrying suspicious materials. The Gestapo could not believe a single man had done this alone. They spent months torturing him, certain he was part of a British intelligence plot. He was not. He told them the truth repeatedly. He had acted alone. They refused to believe it. The historian Ian Kershaw, whose monumental biography of Hitler remains the definitive account of the period, noted that the regime found it psychologically impossible to accept that one ordinary man with no backing, no network, and no ideology beyond basic human decency had come within 13 minutes of ending the war before it truly began. Elser was kept alive as a special prisoner held in Dachau, moved to Sachsenhausen. The Nazi regime wanted him available for a show trial after the war when they planned to prove the British had orchestrated the assassination attempt. That trial never came. In April 1945, with Allied forces closing in, Georg Elser was executed. He was 41 years old. He never saw the world he almost saved. This is what makes the story so difficult to sit with, not the near miss itself, but what the near miss reveals. One person acting alone with hand tools and patience and a clarity of moral purpose that governments and armies and intelligence agencies failed to match, came closer to changing history than almost any organized effort that followed.